Sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, Mr. Rankin was asking you during question period about overspending within departments and within additional appropriations. And I just wonder, you touched on this a bit, but for the sake of giving you more than 45 seconds, in light of the deficit you're dealing with and the revenue challenge you're dealing with, is there going to be a different approach to how you manage department budgets after the provincial budget passes?
I think so. This is a discussion of additional appropriations, and I think, you know, when we see a need that we're able to address, we address it. And you know, some of those things are just through budget process. Some are through additional appropriations. So if you look at the additional appropriations over the last 4 years, I guess, it's a big number. That's because we were able to invest an additional $4 billion in healthcare. That's through retention bonuses. That's through, you know, investments into the healthcare system. We were able to invest $500 million in housing. There was a big need in housing. We were able to respond to some of the natural disasters we've had because we had to respond. So I think the message is that when we can do for Nova Scotians, we do for Nova Scotians. And if there's something that comes up that needs to be addressed, and it's not in the budget, but it's an obvious thing that needs to be addressed, and we can, we're not going to change. We're still going to do that.
But are we at the point financially where we can't? Right, because of
sometimes you have to find a way. Like if there's a natural disaster, I can't definitively say we're not going to respond to that. We're going to respond to it. But the financial challenges facing the province are real. And that is a discussion to be had with Nova Scotians. I think leading up to this budget, we probably didn't have enough of that discussion. But that won't happen again. I think Nova Scotians are becoming more acutely aware of the challenges we face and the limitations on what government can do and can't do. You know, there are a lot of demands, but we can't do it all. We just can't afford to do it all, but there are certain things that we have to do. So we'll continue to manage like that. I hope as the economy goes and there is more, we can do more. And if that happens during the year and there's a need, we're going to address it in the moment. That's why the legislation is there, to allow government to be responsive. That's not new legislation we put in. It's existed since long before I was here and maybe even before most of you were here, I guess. I don't know.
I remember.
You remember when it came in? When did it come in? NDP? The NDP?
It was similar to what was there before.
Okay, all right. So the NDP created the law for additional appropriations, and we're just using it.
No, it was there before.
Okay, it was there before them. I'm sorry, I don't want to misquote you. Anyway. But it's a long-standing law and a long-standing tradition. And the reason it exists is so government can be responsive to Nova Scotians. And we're not going to change that. And when we need to be responsive to Nova Scotians, we'll be responsive to Nova Scotians.
Premier, you've talked about needing to bring a more human approach into the budget process. How are you going to do that next year? How will you bring more humanity into your approach?
We'll do a pretty significant debrief on this. And make sure we get it right. But my thought process right now is that I've done in the past a healthcare tour around the province. I would certainly be open to that kind of a tour where we sit with Nova Scotians in communities and listen to them, talk to them about the challenges we face, listen to their ideas and solutions, and I think we can have, there's a lot of brain power in this province, and I think we can activate it more fully towards the challenges we face, and that would be kind of my assessment right now, but it'll be a pretty significant engagement process that we'll undertake next time.
Premier, you said in
I just want to clarify, you mean like a budget?
I think it would be, budget would certainly be part of it, but I'm sure there'll be cost of living, I'm sure there'll be elements to maybe it's a financial pressures tour. I don't know, it's something like that though.
Premier, you said in an online posting yesterday that the 3% staff cut to long-term care facilities is being restored. Is that the case? And if that's the case, is it in this list of that we received today of the 50?
Yeah, so I think so. If, I guess first off, so when we kind of step back and really kind of worked with Nova Scotians, I guess, and listened to them on some of the impacts, on some of the practical impacts, and realized that that we couldn't accept that. We had to change. So we've made some change course on that, and those were obviously kind of focused on where we thought it was actually daily needs. Supports for people living with disabilities, supports for seniors. So you're talking on the seniors category. So yes, we're going to work with the homes around the province and the providers. Obviously, there are financial challenges that are real, so we need to work through that. But I think we'll be a little more, to use the word human, on how we do that to make sure that nothing that's in that budget causes a staffing crisis on the front lines.
Your post was pretty specific that the 3% was being restored. Is that the case?
It is the case. But it is also the case that we're going to work with them and look to see what's possible.
There were supposed to be additional 3% cuts in each of the subsequent 3 years, I believe. Are those going to go ahead, or are those not?
I don't want to. Yeah, we put a financial plan out there, and that's the financial plan. But it's reflective of the realities of the financial challenges that should not be lost on any Nova Scotian. They are real. So we'll work with them, but yeah, it's our expectation that government gets more and more efficient and maintains the frontline services to Nova Scotians.
The list we got today of grants that are being restored appears to include this. It looks like it's one of the lines under seniors and long-term care. It's more than $6 million being restored. Now, that wasn't one of the grants in that list that we got on after Budget Day. It wasn't part of the $130 million in grant cuts, but it looks like it's part of what you were restoring yesterday. Is that correct? Yeah,
it's a program. So we have grants and programs. So that would have been under program through departmental programming.
So are there any other things in that list that we got today of $53.6 million that was not a grant cut that is being restored?
Yeah, there's program things in there. There was a meals program for seniors. We're just trying to do the best we can for Nova Scotians. We're not restricting ourselves to what's a grant, what's a program. We're just taking the holistic view. When we realized the impact in certain areas, we stood back and looked across. And this is part of the complexity of the budget, because there are grants that are for one department, but they're administered by another department, and that's probably something we're going to look at too.
I just want to make sure we can report on this in an accurate way. I'm not looking for you at the podium right now to walk me through things. Could somebody talk to us today about which of those things were not grant cuts, just so that we can report correctly?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yes. But I think my message to Nova Scotians would be that it doesn't matter what bucket it came from. Every bit of it impacts Nova Scotians, and what we're adjusting now is we weren't limiting ourselves to a list of grants and say, well, this is getting political attention, so let's focus on that. We're actually just saying where's the impact on people, and how do we kind of address that? So, but yeah, absolutely, somebody would be happy to walk through that with you.
Sorry, looking at that list, one grant that is not on the list of the ones set to be restored is the Mi'kmaq Services under the Department of Education at $148,000. I understand that is not being restored. I'm wondering if you can help me understand why.
I think the minister today was kind of making an important point. Significant investment in the community, $31 million. When we first formed government, that was $10 million. So there's significant investments across government in supports. And on a specific case like that, through the education system, we work with the education system to make sure that what's being delivered to students is delivered through the education system, working with what's there.
Yesterday, you indicated that, by your understanding, the restored grants would mean that all grants that had been cut affecting Indigenous students would be restored. It would appear with this and about 10 other Indigenous-related programs that perhaps this funding is not being restored. Can you help me out?
Yeah, I think we talked about making adjustments to programs and grants that impact students. It's not clear to me that I said all. I'm not sure where. Is that something you're...
In this press conference yesterday, you said, by your understanding, to all Indigenous students would be restored.
I mean, my understanding then and now is that significant restoring of funds, significant investments in the community, $31 million by most standards, and most people would be considered significant. I certainly consider it significant, and incredible faith in the education system to deliver for our students. So balancing those two things, those are the types of, I mean, we could go through every single grant that this province administers, and somebody could ask me, do I wish it was higher? And I'd say I wish it was higher. But the reality is we have certain financial challenges, and we're trying to do what we can, as most as we can, and even more than we can. That's how we have a $1.3 billion deficit. So I wish we could do more, but we'll do what we can. But thank you guys.
Not
Appreciate it.
giving this